Hello, welcome back to the Mission Accepted podcast. Thank you, best audience ever. Are you guys getting sick of hearing that? Look, I'm going to be going to a concert tonight and I'm going to wear a t-shirt saying best audience ever. And they're going to think it's them, but I'm talking about you guys because you're so active and you tell me what to do. And normally I don't like that, but because it's coming from you guys and you're telling me who you want to see and you're cheering things on and you guys are sharing, because I'm hearing from people that are getting the podcast that's shared. So look, please subscribe, share the word. You guys know what we do here. We took a lot of time to think about the name Mission Accepted, because when you think about who the cool people are that are coming on the show, that's exactly what they did. So entrepreneurs, people that support entrepreneurs, we have a massive supporter to the world of everyone on Mission Accepted today. You're going to hear from Michelle. I'm not going to tell you her story because it's super cool. She's going to tell it herself, but entrepreneurs, entrepreneurs. It's like, what's this new entrepreneur? Well, it's an entrepreneur on fire, right? They're doing multiple things, having success in multiple areas. Many times it's under one umbrella. So that's that entrepreneur, and then creatives, singers, writers, actors, directors, artists, sculptors. Like if you're creative, many times people don't realize that you have an entrepreneurial story because you got to make your break. And then of course, media. Podcast hosts, extra shout out to podcast hosts, radio hosts, and TV hosts, and people that are in media. So we want to hear from you. If you are one of those, we want to hear from you. Here's the cool thing about Mission Accepted. And I know you haven't heard from too many Gen Zs yet, because we're just kicking off and we're kind of got them on fire right now. But here's a very cool thing. I personally, as someone who's been in business for 30 years, have never seen a time where all the generations are coming together to support each other in entrepreneurship. Like, never. You are seeing 12, 14, 16, 19, 20-year-olds starting a business on Instagram, starting a business on TikTok. Like there's this whole economy that's gone from entrepreneur to like this whole collaborative project. It's almost like a project. So look, there's a different generation in terms of age, but there's not a different generation in terms of passion. And so one generation is coming in, helping the other. We talk about it all the time. We're like, hey, do you know how to communicate? Like, and you talk on the phone and they're like, hey, can we just do this over text? You know, or I'll meet you on Snapchat. We're like, hey, I'll meet you on Facebook. They're like, I don't do Facebook. I'm like, I don't do Snapchat. So it's super interesting in this world of, you know, online marketing, online businesses, offline businesses, and bringing them together. So we're just having a blast on the show. I want to thank you for coming on. And if this is the first time that you've come on, well, you're going to hear some pretty cool things about mission and accepting that mission and what it is like to continue to accept it. So look, today we have an incredible guest. Her name is Michelle, and you guys have probably heard so much, and you're going to hear it for another 14 months, actually. Well, probably past that, maybe 15 or 16, about this crazy walk that myself and Corinne are going to be doing across Ireland. And so in my hunt and search for the right match to be, shall we say, philanthropic with and have the proceeds of this great event go to, I had the pleasure of meeting Michelle. And it was kind of really interesting, right? So we met through, I sent email, didn't hear, somehow ended up on I sent an email out to a bunch of organizations I thought were super cool. Didn't hear back. It was kind of weird. It was during the time when we were all really not, shall we say, in the last couple of years. And so I'm like, I wonder if it's the pandemic. I wonder if people aren't in the office. I'm not hearing back from people. But all of a sudden I ended up on a mailing list. Have you guys ever ended up on a mailing list? I'm subscribed all morning, but this one was called She Is the Music. I'm like, oh, that's super cool. And so I'm like watching their stuff. And I'm like, I'm sure I reached out to them. I wonder if they got my email. And so I reached out, Michelle reached back, and here we are. And they are a major recipient to this crazy, unforgettable walk that we're doing. But the reason why I've brought her on the show is not only to talk about She Is the Music, because that's what she does, is we've been just poking around her life a little bit here, a little bit before the show. And she has great skill and gift in the world of being philanthropic, which, as we know, many of us as entrepreneurs, we align with different charities, or even not as entrepreneurs, just as humans, we align with charities that really mean something to us. But there's a whole other there's a backstage to it, right? It's like why you do it, how you do it. And it never occurred to me that there would be someone that would help with the strategy around that. So I'm not going to tell Michelle's story. Like I said, I'm going to bring her onto the show. I'm going to stop talking. You're like, Deb, get this woman on here. I'm going to stop talking and bring her on. And then let her tell her story a little bit about how she ended up first of all, doing what she's doing, and then having the pleasure to be able to align with Alicia Keys and work with She Is the Music. So Michelle, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Deborah. Nice to meet everyone. I'm so glad and excited to be here.
Fantastic.
I guess we'll jump in.
Yeah, you jump in, because if you don't, you know what's going to happen. I'm going to keep talking.
Amazing. Well, obviously, I'm Michelle Arkuski. I was telling Deborah that I originally had an interest in philanthropy pretty early on. I began my journey with an organization called Stand Up to Cancer that actually funds cancer research and immunotherapies, and they have a Canadian branch. If you know, some of the audience, I feel like, is mostly Canadian based. And eventually I oversaw their marketing campaigns. They had televised events that they did to raise money. It was a big celebrity event on television, and I realized I liked working in entertainment and philanthropy. I thought it was a really fun combination because it was sort of the best of both worlds for me. So Bradley Cooper hosted, we've had Oprah on, we've had Reese Witherspoon, every celebrity that you can think of participated or was an ambassador in Stand Up to Cancer campaigns. So I got my start there, sort of in their marketing and communications area. And I then started to branch out throughout a more broad scope in the company. It was an organization called Entertainment Industry Foundation. They're still around. They're LA based, and they technically provide the 501c3s for charities and foundations for celebrities or people with high net worth who want to start their own foundation. So eventually, from Stand Up to Cancer, I was overseeing Charlize Theron, Panic at the Disco, G-Eazy, Colin Kaepernick, a bunch of different, Jennifer Hudson's was there. And each of them had something that they felt passionately about. They knew they wanted to use their resources and the platform in a positive way to create impact and change. And so ultimately, we got to help them with that. They, of course, came in with their own ideas, but we were able to provide some of them with our resources and our expertise to really grow what they wanted to accomplish. Eventually, Alicia Keys' foundation, Alicia Keys and a group of other amazing women, Jody Gerson, first global chairman and CEO of Universal Music Publishing, Alicia's female engineer of 20 years, her agent, they all came together to create She Is the Music. And She Is the Music had their 501c3 at Entertainment Industry Foundation. And eventually, as the organization was growing, my CEO at the time said that they needed somebody to run and develop and strategize the foundation full time. And here I am, about 3.5 years later, and it's been such a blessing, and I feel so lucky to work with amazing women across the board.
Wow. So before we dive into a little bit to more kind of honing in on She Is the Music and what that's about, so as people are listening, two things pop into my head. So did you go to school before you went to work for, like what's your background necessarily that took you to Stand Up for Cancer? Or did you just have a big cause and go, I'm jumping in, stick me in anywhere? You're shaking your head no. So what's your, yeah.
I wish it was more linear, but it was actually like so many people, it was really non-linear. I actually went to school for musical theater my freshman year of college in New York. I moved from Michigan. And I was 18 years old, and I was full-time at NYU for musical theater. And I thought, you know what? This isn't for me. The city wasn't for me. What I was doing wasn't what I wanted to spend my education on. Unfortunately, I was paying for my own bills, for my own student loans. And I thought, I'm going to make a little switch. And so a year later, I transferred to UCLA. I doubled in communications and musical theater just to continue doing what I love. And I interned a lot. I interned at different places. I interned at a talent agency, a PR agency, I feel like I tried to dip my toe in a lot of different things. I even was a real estate intern because that sounded really cool in LA. And it was actually after being a real estate intern that I thought, oof, I wanted to go the complete opposite of the spectrum. And I knew that I didn't want to pursue, I'm sure everyone's wondering, well, you were a musical theater major, but ultimately I knew that I didn't want to pursue that. I didn't want to audition. I didn't want that to be my life. I wanted something else, but I still love that today. I'll sing in my shower, I'll sing in my car and all that stuff. But I think for me, seeing such a different world in real estate made me think, how can I do something that's completely different? And so that's when I got my first job at Stand Up to Cancer, and it kind of really lit a spark for me. And I think having the blessing of still being ingrained in cool projects, entertainment, film, television, music was a huge factor for me, while
Right.
still having that virtuous philanthropic angle really was like, oh, I can do this. And I started to meet more women at my company that I looked up to who, and we can get into this, but there are full consulting agencies and consulting firms that people use to help guide and provide advice and guidance to people who want to be more philanthropic. And it really ignited something in me, and I'll never look back. It's been
There's so many
amazing.
things. Yeah, before we go any further, thank you so much for sharing that. I love, there's elements in there that I think everyone can relate to. First of all, hats off for, there's so many people that get a degree or say, I'm going down this path. And honestly, the longer you go down a path, and sometimes it's a tiny voice, and sometimes it's like, you had this experience of in real estate, and for some reason, whatever that was, sometimes experiences that don't tend to work out, but they show us what we want, is just as important. Like sometimes, I don't know, if you want to talk, you can go from anything from the world of dating to the world of business to the world of marketing to whatever. Sometimes you see something. I mean, we have all done it. Someone comes back with a design for your website. You're like, oh, no, 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 no. Now you could sit there and go, oh my gosh, I just paid them 10 hours to do that. You could go, oh my gosh, I am so clear on what I don't want, which makes you clear on
Yeah.
what you do want. So congratulations for hearing that voice. The second thing is, you were able to bridge your passion. You didn't leave your passion behind. You could hear it as you're talking, that you can still create passion. There's so many people that are duo, that are like, it's a hybrid. That this is the
Definitely.
explosion we've just experienced. There's a lot of people that do what they do for a living, and it's not unsatisfying, and then they do the passion off the side of their desk. I mean, I think 80% of the entrepreneurs I work with are off the side of their desk, right? I'm gonna forever thank Laura for that comment. This is a woman that sat off the side of her desk. You'd love her. She's actually the project manager now. There you go.
Oh,
For
amazing.
yeah,
I
yeah. So
love
when we
that.
interviewed her as an artist, she talked about working off the side of her desks in a communications company, ironically. So I think that there's some really cool pieces to take there, that you still are living within your passion. You just kind of saw something that you didn't want, which helped you decide to go something towards what you did. The other thing is the aha moment around picking a project or a charity or an organization that really aligns with you. Because I was actually just talking to a friend of mine the other day that's looking in their company to kind of, it's time to give away, or they want to make it part of what they do. And what does that mean? And to know that there's people out there that actually will strategize. Maybe share with people, because there's a lot of that. What is the benefit of having someone, or what is it that someone should look for if they are in a position to be philanthropic? I'm glad I said that word. For some reason, that word can trip me up. And what should they be looking for? Like, what's some of those fundamentals?
I think when you talk about fundamentals of what you want to invest in, because ultimately it's an investment, you're contributing and you're donating, but it's an investment. And so you treat it as such. So what do you believe in? What personally aligns with you? Deborah, you're a woman, you're interested in music, so that's an option. Music would be a great fit. There are other people who love animals. Maybe that's for them. There are other people who want to support children, and maybe that's something for them. And I think it goes the same for companies and individuals. Write a list of things you feel passionately about that you think you want to try to make a difference in, or something that you actually believe that can be changed, and start from there. And depending on the resources you have, and honestly, even if it's $5 a year, it's still something that you can say, hey, this is something that I believe in, and whatever my $5 is going towards, I know that in some way I'm making a difference. And it's as simple as that. Companies obviously have, Entertainment Industry Foundation is different because we want to help your foundation grow, right? But if I'm Google or a tech company, I'm going to have my own corporate social responsibility department. And that entire department is going to oversee what is our sustainability, what is our footprint on the environment, what are we putting our money towards. I know that there usually is not a theme, but there's a cause or an impact campaign that they work on every 5 years or every 1 year. And they say, this is what we're focusing on this year. And they do everything they can to do their research and to reach out to smaller grassroots organizations that are boots on the ground, as well as bigger organizations. So I think the advice is just figure out what you're interested in and what you care about, and then look at your resources, what's possible, what's not. Maybe it's not monetary. Maybe it's just your time. Maybe it's volunteering once a year, once a month, whatever you can. Maybe it's word of mouth. There's no job too small when it comes to nonprofit support.
I love that. That's a great t-shirt, my friend. There's no job too small. Hashtag that all day long. Okay, well, you've had an incredible journey. Thanks for giving us some insight into that. Because you work with people that, have these creative ideas, are project minded. I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of people there, including myself. It's like, what a job, man, girl, you nailed it. What a beautiful place to be. Honestly, in supporting someone. I mean, I think that's the element, and how we do that changes face. For me, I know I have, 2 different companies, but my core is about supporting the entrepreneur, right? And so when you see someone either walk across the stage or increase in their impact or have a different paycheck or whatever, there's a sense of you've done better because you know that they've done better. And I think that's there's a whole premise behind that, right? And so the supporting agents to that are so what is it? It's the unsung heroes. It's like all the people that bring things together, people that are the back of the stage. I remember it's so funny because my daughter was in musical theater. And she decided, and she was incredible, right? When she smiled on stage, everyone, the whole place lit up. And she got to that decision-making place. She went to a school like Fame, right? Where all they did is, dance and sing and what have you. So her thing was classical music. And they got to that point where she had to make that decision. So she decided she wanted to go be a lawyer for the UN. So she had to go into socials, and she let musical theater go. And then she changed, then that changed for her as well. And then she went into childcare, taking care of, babies 1 to 3 years old. But the point that I was kind of going with that is that it's and we went to New York when she graduated. We went to, we got into the assembly, the UN assembly, and all those kind of crazy, cool, crazy things that can happen. But I'm taking it back to the musical theater. They tried so hard. They're like, oh my gosh, you're so good. We want you to take the lead. We want you to be the lead role. We want you to be singing out on stage. And she's like, I love being in the back. Like, she loved being the backup singer. She loved standing behind. And it was like, that was her place. She loved backstage, and she loved giving support to the woman or to the man or to the actors that were bellowing it out on the front. And it's so funny because people used to say, oh my God, she's so good, she should be up front. I'm like, yeah, but she loves support. And if I look at her whole career, wanted to be a lawyer for the UN, not everybody wants to take care of 1 to 3 year olds. I mean,
Right.
sometimes people don't even want them in their house for more than 4 hours. You know what I mean? And so
Yeah.
she's in a supporting role, right? She's in a supporting role, and that's her jam. That's the place that makes it happy. So anyways, I'm going to talk to you about She Is the Music. Let's talk about that. So maybe give us, I mean, it sounds kind of like She Is the Music, Alicia Keys, women in music, but I think some of the interesting things around that would be, for me, now I'm a bit of a music hound. Anyone that knows me knows that. My poor friend that's staying here today got to hear me sing in the shower. She probably would have rather heard you singing, but she got to hear me singing instead. So for me, I was even shocked at kind of where things are at for women in the music industry. So maybe give some insight onto why this organization exists in the first place. Some of your statistics were quite shocking, alarming, maybe then.
Definitely. So it's in 2017, USC, University of California, University of Southern California did a study on women in music. And the study found essentially of the top 100 that less than 12% of women are songwriters, less than 2% are producers and engineers, and that no woman, which we all know, has still not won a Grammy in a non-classical category for Producer of the Year. Those stats are, give or take, the same today. The study gets published every year. It's called the Annenberg Inclusion Initiative. They're amazing. Dr. Stacy Smith is one of our founding board members, along with everyone else. And so these women couldn't believe it. No one could believe it. They came together and they said, let's do something about it. And it just started with an idea. So they came together to create She Is the Music. The premise is that we create impact by 3 areas of focus. One are all female songwriting camps. And when I say camps, people get a little confused. They think, oh, like sleepaway camps, kids. They think kids.
Yeah.
And yes, of course, we want to touch the lives of children. And that's part of our second pillar, which is mentorship. But camps are essentially sessions in the studio that we put together around a female artist, female producers, female songwriters, and a female engineer. It sounds really basic. That often never happens. In fact, the chances of you even being in a studio with another woman are very slim. And there's still this space where, if you're a female who's an engineer, for a bunch of dudes who are coming in the studio, no one's going to think you're the engineer, because it's a STEM role, science, math. It's something that we still have to propel forward. So we facilitate these camps across the world. We've done them in the UK, we've done them in Europe, we've done them in Latin America, we've done them in the States. We just had one in LA that was an all women of color camp. So we do different things that facilitate different genres. The second one that I mentioned is mentorship. We have a mentorship program that's running as we speak. It's across 11 different areas of the music industry, everything from A&R and publishing to songwriting to PR to marketing. And it's a one-on-one program that runs 10 weeks. And we also do workshops and tutorials and everything that's outside of the mentorship program as well. Third, we have the largest global database of women in music. It has a job board that we update daily. You can go ahead, create a profile. You can log in, meet other women. There's a message board. And it's just a way for people to find other women, because so often the excuse is, well, who? I need a videographer, but who? I don't know any women. Well, that eliminates the excuse. And so those are 3 key areas of focus, but ultimately our mission is to increase the number of women working in music, songwriters, artists, industry professionals, and everything in between. So knowing that we get this study republished every year, we do see improvements. It's improving, and there's at least awareness. There's this awareness that wasn't there before. And so I think it's a little bit more on top of people's minds when they're hiring, and making a difference, but we have a long ways to go. So
I was just sharing that in terms of long ways to go, because of course, Tony was here and we were talking media all night, and here we are. I'm sure we're going to talk it all day. And I was sharing some of the statistics and saying that, and we were talking about women. And so she was looking up women in film, and because she's in film, right? And she's in TV and network. And we're looking at the numbers, and I was like, what we're hoping for obviously is for the more women that feel the allowance, right? Feel the allowance. Because obviously it was not steeped in allowance from the time that the industry started. And there was different things that were expected and all those kind of things. So the more allowance that happens, the more women will just naturally step into it. It's kind of like what we see. I mean, not to use my son as an example, but when my son's, and when people think fashion, and I'm like, well, here's a video of him at 16 sewing. And they're like, that's so bizarre, right? And he's taking, it's like when men hit, like, I'm like, yeah, there he is, sewing his little first piece of whatever. And it's us getting past the idea. And we don't even really know the stereotyping that we do. We just make assumption. Now, honestly, I'm going to plead on this one. I was ignorant to the level of the statistics when I saw them, because as a consumer, as someone who's listening to the radio, I mean, I was raised on Loretta Lynn, Tammy Wynette, Glenn Campbell. So I heard as many female artists, Patsy Cline, like I can list off more, probably Patsy Cline. So I can list off more, or as many men to women. And so the assumption when we live in our bubble is that it's pretty equal, particularly in the arts, because the arts is this open-armed, it's cool for everybody to do everything. So I think it's even more surprising. So I think that absolutely it's right. And we talked about how we still have a long way to go. Before, obviously, we couldn't travel, and now we can again. So yay. One of my dreams was to meet Gloria Steinem. And so I went down. She was only an hour and a half away drive. And I went down and I was listening to her on the stage. And as someone who's been following her work for decades, I was like, and she was talking about where we've come. And some of it has not been very far. And I was like, I didn't realize how much further we still had to go. And we see that, all over. But I think that first level of awareness, particularly in the arena of arts, because everyone I talked to since I met you and had those statistics, they're like, what? That doesn't make any sense to me. Because as a listener, if I look at the music I listen to, it feels equal.
And it's interesting because there are so many amazing female artists.
Mm-hmm.
You have to look behind the team. You have to look at the team behind the artist. And I certainly will not call anyone out, because there's nothing wrong with this. But there are a lot of female artists who have predominantly male teams, and that's their choice, and those are the people they work with, and maybe those are who they feel comfortable with, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that.
Right.
But it's just something to be mindful of. Whereas some people decided that they want all women teams, and there's no right answer. I think there's just being mindful of it and knowing that the roles outside of being an artist are not equal. The executive labels and management companies are still working their way to create an even playing field. And I think there's going to be a long ways to go with production and engineering, because I don't think that was sexy. But now there's a lot more resources, a lot more tools for women. They don't have to feel intimidated being in a class or a studio with just men. So I think that there will be a lot of progress there eventually as more opportunities and access open up. But one thing you made me think of, when we talk about film and television, this is something that still kind of blows my mind. When we talk about film and television, equally a boys' club, it had its reckoning with Me Too. What I think is so interesting is there are unions and protections with film and television that music still doesn't quite have. And the stories that I've heard about women going into a studio and having an inappropriate or not okay experience is baffling to me. And
Mm.
there's no HR in music. You can't go to someone and say, oh, hey, so and so asked me to sit on his lap to learn some Pro Tools. And it's just like, the answer to that is, well, I guess you're not going to work with him anymore, or don't work with him, but nothing's going to happen to him. And that's just the way that it works. There's really no protection against these women, and it can go with men too. I know men get sexually harassed. It doesn't go one way, but there are no consequences. There's word of mouth and you can have your label, but it's still just a really touchy, it's a touchy personal world. You're in a small room, late hours, people drinking, people smoking, and it's just, I think it's just so important that we continue to facilitate these comfortable environments for women, even if it just means women connecting with other women. Maybe they have a pen pal now and across the country. It's so interesting to me.
Well, and it only gets changed by getting talked about. I mean, we talk about that even in the world as entrepreneurs. It only gets better through being uncomfortable. And so having uncomfortable conversations, saying, did this kind of, those kind of like, because there's an aloneness that happens when things are not talked about. Right. And so many times people think it's about them, but it's not necessarily the case. And so I think even this conversation, this, and we're just kind of scratching the surface. This could be very uncomfortable for someone to listen to, hear to, talk about, want to get involved in, what have you, because there's still that, it's just an uncomfortable conversation, right? Because we would much rather not think things go wrong in the world. It's just a natural cellular, I wish the world was full of unicorns and lollipops, and we know it's not, but there's certain places that we go. And ironically, entertainment is one of them. Because when you think about it, entertainment is a place where people go to forget about things that aren't. And then when you find out that in the entertainment world or in the film world or that whole movement that's been happening, that, oh my gosh, it's there too. I think it's difficult for people to digest, right? It's like, where can we go where this is not an issue? And it's that first level of awareness, whether it's realizing that there's no one that's won an award that, there's, or that, 2%.
Songwriters just got a category in the Grammys. People who write songs for artists are so underpaid. They're so underappreciated. They just got their own category. It is crazy to me. It's crazy.
That statement makes me go, what? It's like things that makes you go, huh? Like, we're like, hey, over here, huh? Over there. So, but like, I'm like, you're like, how is that possible? Because it's going to sound like all I listen to is country, but I was listening to Kenny Chesney yesterday. I do listen to other music. And he was talking about when he heard this song that was written, and he's like, I get to sing that song. Like, as soon as he heard it, he's like, this is going to be a massive hit. And I get to sing it. Like, and he was giving the credit to the songwriter on the song that I was listening to. But it doesn't even make sense. Like, for someone to sing a song, someone had to write it. Like they just got a category now.
It's the strangest thing.
It's the strangest thing.
It's the strangest thing. And I know from an art look, I'm trying to think of both sides, right? I know as the artist, if it worked for me, the artist making this song so popular, this song would be, but it's like, that's someone's work, that's somebody's baby. And there's pay inequality between them. There's massive pay inequality between songwriters and artists. And that's not, we want to support everyone, but it's still a business that I think is being worked out. And I hope that there will be some There will
Yeah.
be some justice soon.
Well, the more dialogue, right? So, here we are talking about music and people are like, hey, that's super cool. I had someone say to me the other day, they're like, so you're walking and you're giving the money to the music industry. I never heard that before. And then me and Tony were talking last night and I said, sometimes, I said, well, not only is music my passion, but I truly believe I've used it for healing in my life. I don't know about you. Has anyone had a broken heart? Like, seriously, have you, we use music for healing. I said, for me, I'm like, there's kind of like, God, love, and music. It goes like that in terms of vibration and power and how it heals and all that kind of stuff. And I said, but think about it. There's so many, like a lot of times and I'm not saying don't feed those in need. Honestly, my house is an open door. You can walk in and there's food at the front table. Like my neighbors used to walk in and just like open my door. I am all about that. But sometimes we forget about the middle. Like sometimes we forget about the middle. We listen to these artists or we know someone that's trying to make it and we just don't see them as people in need. And I'm like, no, there's people trying to make a record shop still stay alive. There's people that are trying to get this, their art out to the world. And I think sometimes people get confused about supporting the middle because they just put all musicians in one category. You're either a star or going to be one. They don't see music or musicians as necessarily struggling. They don't see them as struggling artists. They don't see them coming up against injustice. They don't see them coming up. And when I said, no, really think about it. Music so needs a different level of awareness other than listening to the music. There's support for the artists, right? And there's certain, there's some great causes out there. I know a really good friend of mine, Larry in LA, actually, he goes down and plays guitars and, works with, what is it? Gibson Gibbs or something like that. Right. And so there's some really great organizations, but we don't necessarily hear about them as people that listen to the music. I always say it's that middle crew, right? It's the people that are struggling in the middle. Right. So anyways, it is true. So let's talk about what we're going to be doing. So we're going to be walking and we're going to be raising music awareness, not only through conversations like this, but there is they did it to our Facebook group. And it's a place where, and it's super cool. I got bands reaching out right now, like, how can we help? How can we do this? And so people can go and put their gigs on there. Like if you're doing a gig, if you need something, anything along the lines of music, or I need, or I'm doing an event, or I'm producing an album, or whatever it is that they're doing, they can use it as a portal, right? For people to know and people to follow along our journey. We kind of call it the journey to the journey, right? People can step up and tap on board. So things like awareness, getting out the word about the different aspects of music, what's needed in the music industry, the different organizations that are looking. People can contact you guys. We're going to have a great page on the theydidittour.ca. So the website just went live. And if you're listening to this in 6 months from now, it went live last June. And your page for She Is the Music is going to be up there by next week. We're super excited about that. People can reach out to you directly and tap into what you're doing. Just because it's an organization for women doesn't mean that men can't support, right? So anyone can support. And I'm sure you have a lot of people that support that aren't necessarily in the music industry or even women,
Definitely. Actually, it's funny. We had one of our corporate sponsors that was new this year was Haagen-Dazs, and Haagen-Dazs, I'll give them a little shout out. Sorry. A little shout out. They really wanted to make an effort to support the arts in general, and they picked an organization within music, within theater, within film and television, within art, and we happen to be their music arm. So we're very grateful. But nothing to do with music. Not necessarily women. So
no, just it's the cause that speaks to you, right? It's the cause that speaks to you. So and honestly, it's going to be an amazing experience, just going through this whole process and doing something that's going to be international as well. And I think that's one of the most beautiful things about your organization is how strong it is globally and how people can tap in globally. And so obviously we're doing the training in Canada, predominantly Vancouver, Canada. And then we'll be flying over to Dublin, Ireland, and walking from Dublin to Galway. And people are like, why are you not just walking from Dublin to Cliffs of Moher? Because we're doing 297K. Why add the extra dip up? Because it literally is from Dublin. If you've been to Ireland, you know we're going to be going up and then back over. And I'm like, how can you walk for music in the beautiful country of Ireland, which is so full of music? I mean, oh my gosh, every pub we're going to have a hard time leaving, and not go to a place that, you know, Galway Girl. I mean, I'm like, I don't know who's going to meet us there to sing that song, but darn it, it's got to be somebody. I mean, you know, maybe Ed Sheeran's not busy that day, or, you know, maybe we'll get Elton and someone's got to sing Galway Girl. And if at the very least, it'll be me and Corrine doing a very bad rendition. And so you're going to have to watch and see that, and then head on to the majestic Cliffs of Moher. And the whole walk is around, you know, there's health, there's wellness, there's mindset, there's music, there's adventure, there's all those things that entrepreneurs eat and breathe, and artists eat and breathe every single day. There's risks included. I know my trainer is trying to prepare me for mine. You know, it's like there's risks included, there's jumping off the cliff, there's time investment, there's all that kind of good stuff that's gonna happen and go down. It's gonna be an incredible experience, absolutely. But I think at the very core of it, it's about gumption. It's about, you know, like that epiphany that you had and you went in. It's like, it's that place where you know what you need to do. And someone's like, why are you doing this? And I'm like, I feel like I'm just being told what to do. At this point, I made the decision, yes. And then once you say yes, then providence happens. And that's where all the kind of interesting stuff goes on. So it's going to be an interesting journey. We're super excited to work with you guys. We're so grateful that we found you. And that even came serendipitously, where, you know, we sent out the word to many organizations that we thought were like going to just jump all over this. And then, well, I'll tell the story and then we'll kind of wrap up. But I have a question for you that for you particularly is probably going to be the hardest question I ever ask anybody. Dorothea is probably not going to, she's like, oh, this is going to be tough. But it's part of the podcast, and, you know, that's part of the deal. Anyways, what was I saying? It's like when I had that epiphany, you know, that walking across the bridge, I could still feel the sunshine on my face. And I heard the words, it's time. And from the words, it's time, my gut said, you need to do a marathon and donate the money. What? What?
I love that.
Like, how bizarre. Like, it's time. That could have meant a million different things. And then how it went to, I knew I was going to donate half the money. I was just going to do it by myself. You know, I know a bunch of people that I got some extra, you know, $100, $200. I'm like, okay, I'm just going to go give. And I was going to give half the money to an organization that was Amnesty International, because I've done a lot of work with them in relationship to music, supporting the bands that come that support Amnesty. And then the other two, I'm like, I'm going to donate it to music. And then contacting Amnesty, and they're like, we can't take the money. I'm like, what do you mean? You know, they couldn't take the money because if I get sponsored, there's an alliance. And then it kind of just went down that road, and then we found you. But before we found you, like, honestly, just a short time before we found you, and we found you, meaning we had that conversation, I didn't hear back from any of the organizations. And I was like, I'm having a really hard time giving this money away. And I was walking with my girlfriend, the same girlfriend that I was heading over to walk with when I had heard these words, it's time. I mean, some people might have said, just take some medication and stop, you know. But I said, I was walking with her and I'm like, I'm not hearing back from anybody. Like, it's so bizarre. I sent this email out to some people that I thought would be really interested in receiving money. And I'm like, and I'm not hearing back. And I said, maybe I'm not supposed to do it. I don't know. I heard this thing. I got it going. It was just going to be me. Now it's turning into this whole thing. Maybe I'm not supposed to do it. And we're walking along and we're having this conversation, right? And I'm like, I felt like it was kind of divinely inspired. And I'm not kidding you. We're walking, you know, and this is during the time of the pandemic. So no one's walking around each other. You're walking very far apart. So we're walking on this side of the path and someone else is coming up on the other side of the path and there's no one else around. And we're walking. And I literally am like, I don't know if the universe wants me to do this one. And her name's Tammy. And she looks at me and she goes, I don't know, Deb. I mean, it's kind of, you know. And then she goes, oh, I think you better. I go, why? And there was a guy walking towards us and he had on a sweatshirt. And I know if you guys are listening and not watching, the lettering on his shirt probably was, I'm going to say maybe 9, 10, 12 inches high. And all across his shirt was Ireland. And he just quietly walked by us and she's like, I think you better. And I was like, okay.
So
and then
crazy.
Just, you know, not long after that, I'm seriously, it could have been days, no longer than a week. We had conversation and I'm like, okay. But I was this close to going, I don't think this is going to work. Wow. Crazy, right? And then we had a conversation. I know.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So is there anything else that you want to tell people, like, before I ask you this very important question?
No, I think we covered it.
She's like, what is it? Okay. So you're on your way to a desert island, and you dance between LA and New York. So you get, you deserve it. You deserve to go away on a desert island, and you're going and you're not coming back. And you've
Okay.
got room in your suitcase for one album. And it is the album you couldn't imagine not listening to the rest of your days. What album are you taking with you?
Ugh.
I know. And I'm not making that a special question for you. It literally is the question everyone gets. She's like, oh my gosh, who am I devoted to? Okay, got to go into your gut. What album?
You go into my gut.
Yeah.
So
Let's pretend you don't do what you
hard.
do for a living and who you do it for.
I would say it's kind of lame though. Okay, I'm not, and I promise I'm not doing this to get out of this. I really would have it be a musical theater soundtrack.
Yeah.
Does that count? It's not an
Well,
album though.
musical theater soundtrack. So is there, so I know, okay, a lot of people say, can I say my playlist? And I don't let them get away with playlists. It's like that one album, one singer, maybe there's one song you couldn't imagine. Trust me, it was really hard. It's even hard for me when people ask me that, and I had someone throw it back in my face. Is there
I would go with, honestly, I think I'd go with Aretha Franklin. I would probably do like one of her older
Okay.
ones, like Amazing Grace.
Okay. Oh, okay. One day, if we ever get together, and we will be, we know we're going to meet each other soon, and you get enough Riesling and maybe a little bourbon, and I'll sing you a Loretta Lynn rendition. That is what I used to play on the organ for my grandmother. You'd have to get me a little sauced up, but I'll put myself to shame, and you will for sure want to take Aretha Franklin, because you're like, ooh, that was really bad, Deb. Okay.
No.
All right. Hey, look, I know that you're a busy lady, and you've just come back from a gorgeous trip in Africa, and you've got things going on and things to do. So I so appreciate, I'm looking forward to this collaboration, and I know it's not going to end when my feet hit the cliffs of Moher. And sure enough, I'm sure there's going to be something around She Is the Music in Vancouver, Canada, when this is all said and done. So I really appreciate you.
Thank you so much. Likewise, we're really grateful for this opportunity.
Absolutely. Okay. Till next time. Bye, everybody.
Everyone.
And thank you for tuning in. Share the episode. You've got some feedback. I know you do. And I know you're going to send it. And if you want to come on to the show, absolutely come on to the show. And if you really love the whole idea around women, you know that there's a book that is being published, and it is called Mission Accepted. 262 women, entrepreneurs, creatives, and media, rock legacy and tell all. And that will launch December 1st. If you want to be in the book, then you better call me soon, because it's getting put together as we speak, and there's going to be some incredible women that you want to read and hear about. So if that's you, pick up the phone. Okay, bye for now.
Bye, everyone.